Welcome to Silent Conduit. This channel explores the hidden, lesser-known corners of the internet, what we refer to as the dark web. All content here is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We do not endorse or encourage any illegal activities, and viewers should exercise caution if exploring these topics independently. Stay safe, stay informed, and let's dive in. Also, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Use headphones for better experience.
I never thought the dark web would consume my life or bring me closer to discovering who killed my best friend. For years, I avoided it, haunted by stories of horrors hidden in its depths. But grief sharpens desperation into action. Will's death had gone unsolved for nearly 2 years, and every lead had grown cold. The police had given up after a few months, dismissing it as random gang violence. They didn't know Will like I did, his meticulous nature, his paranoia about safety. He wasn't a random victim. Someone wanted him dead. The night of the second anniversary of his death, I found myself on an online forum for unsolved crimes. Most threads were dead ends or conspiracies. But buried deep in one thread was a cryptic post, "Truth hides where light fears to go." Beneath it was a link to download the Tor browser. For hours, I wrestled with whether to click. But desperation trumped caution. Soon, I was wandering the shadowy, labyrinthine corners of the internet. Stumbling into sites selling horrors I never wanted to imagine, I nearly gave up. But then I found it, a plain black webpage with a banner that read, "Questions answered. Truths exposed." I clicked. The next page was a list of threads, and one caught my eye: "We found her killer." This isn't a joke. Payment through cryptocurrency. My heart raced as I crafted my post, detailing everything I knew about Will's death. Moments later, a reply appeared: "I'll take the case. 2 BTC up front. Your friend didn't run, he waited. The proof follows payment." My chest tightened. Will had waited for someone that night. His phone records confirmed a message had come in just before he died. How could this stranger know that? Against all judgment, I scraped together the Bitcoin. The payment left my account with a sickening finality. The reply came within hours: "Welcome to the rabbit hole. Follow the instructions exactly, or stop now." Attached were files, a grainy video, text documents, and GPS coordinates. My stomach churned as I opened the video. It showed the gas station where Will was killed, but the angle was odd, like it had been taken by a drone or a camera hidden in the rafters. There was Will, standing by the pumps, checking his phone. A hooded figure emerged, approached him, and, in a flash, stabbed him. The video cut off as Will collapsed to the ground, but it was the message below the video that stole my breath: "Not gang-related. This was planned. He knew too much. Keep digging, or walk away." The text file included a set of coordinates and a link to a dark web chat room. The chat room required a passcode, which I deciphered from a series of encrypted messages hidden on different dark web pages. Every clue led me further into the darkness. When I finally cracked the code, a message popped up: "You're in. Prepare yourself." The next message contained a photo of 3 men, faces obscured but tattoos visible. My stomach dropped when I spotted one, a skull with the number 43 beneath it. I cross-referenced it online and found a connection to a cartel known for targeting whistleblowers. But why Will? He was a quiet guy with no criminal ties. Or so I thought. The photo of the tattooed men burned in my mind. I couldn't shake the skull tattoo with the number 43. A quick search confirmed my worst fear: it was linked to a cartel specializing in targeted hits. But none of this fit Will. He wasn't reckless or involved in anything criminal, or so I thought. That night, I powered up Will's old laptop. His parents had passed it to me after his death, hoping I could find closure. Until now, I hadn't touched it. The desktop was clean, with only a few neatly labeled folders. After hours of searching, I found a hidden folder buried deep in the system, for when it's too late. It was password protected. I tried combinations of birthdays and names, but nothing worked, until I typed his favorite quote, "Trust is earned, not given." The folder opened to reveal dozens of files, spreadsheets, scanned documents, and a single video titled, "Watch Me." My stomach tightened as I clicked play. The video showed Will at his desk. His face was pale, his hands trembling. "If you're watching this, I've already messed up," he began. "It started at work. I found financial records, offshore accounts, fake companies, something big. I thought I was helping by digging deeper, but they found out." He lifted his phone to the camera, showing a text from an unknown number. "Drop it. You won't get a second warning." I thought I could outsmart them, he said, his voice cracking. "But they've been watching me. If something happens, don't go after them. Just walk away." The video ended abruptly, leaving me in stunned silence. I turned to the other files. They detailed a money laundering operation involving shell companies and major players I vaguely recognized from news headlines. A chill ran through me as I opened an unsent email addressed to me, dated the night he died. "Jake, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. I was supposed to meet someone tonight who claimed they could help, but I think it's a trap. If anything happens, don't trust the police. Find the truth, but don't let them know you're looking." A ping startled me. A message appeared in the dark web chat room. "You see now." He was a threat. "You don't want to be one too." My hands froze. How did they know? My blinds were closed, the room dark. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. For the first time, I wondered if I wasn't over my head. "Who hired the hit?" I typed back. The response came instantly, "Black glass. You're getting close. But close enough to get burned." I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding. Will had stumbled onto something far bigger than either of us could have imagined. And now, it was pulling me in. Black glass wasn't a person but an alias, a shadowy figure specializing in outsourcing disappearances. It took weeks of relentless searching, piecing together breadcrumbs. Finally, I traced an IP address linked to the name. It led to a private server, which hosted a single document titled, "Final Warning." The document contained an address, a location near the outskirts of town, and a chilling ultimatum: "This ends now. Or you end." Against all reason, I decided to go. I armed myself with a knife and a recording device, leaving a note for my sister in case I didn't return. The address led to an abandoned warehouse, its windows boarded up and its air thick with the smell of rust and decay. Inside, I found a single laptop sitting on a crate, its screen glowing. A message blinked on the screen: "Turn around." I froze. A chill crept down my spine as I felt the presence behind me. Slowly, I turned. A man stood there, his face obscured by a mask, but his voice was calm, calculated. "You've done well to get this far," he said. "But you should have stopped." "Why?" My voice cracked. "Why, Will? What did he do?" "He made himself a threat. Like you." Before I could react, the lights flickered out. In the darkness, I felt a sharp pain in my side. I collapsed, clutching the wound, as the man's footsteps retreated. When I woke, I was in my apartment, the wound crudely stitched but throbbing. My laptop was open, a single message flashing across the screen: "Stay quiet, or this time, we finish the job." But they underestimated me. I still had the recording. And I wasn't going to stop. It all started with a poor decision, one that seemed so harmless at the time. I was tipsy, sitting at my cluttered desk in the dim light of my apartment. I'd had a few too many beers after a long week at work. The buzz was a comfort, but boredom crept in, as it always does. That's when I found myself on the dark web. I don't know what led me there: curiosity, stupidity, or just that strange itch to poke around where you know you shouldn't. One link led to another until I landed on a sketchy marketplace full of bizarre listings: stolen credit cards, exotic animals, and illicit substances. But then, one listing caught my eye: a mystery box. The description was vague, promising random items tailored to your deepest desires and fears. It was ridiculous. A scam, surely. Yet, in my drunken haze, it felt like a gamble I needed to take. $250 worth of Bitcoin later, it was done. I even messaged the seller, slurring my typed words, asking for something exciting. The next morning, I woke with the hangover of the century and only hazy recollections of what I'd done. When I saw the confirmation email, my stomach dropped. I tried to cancel, but the seller's account was gone, and the page had vanished. Weeks passed, and I almost forgot about it. Life went on: work, Netflix binges, the occasional night out. But then, on a cold, overcast afternoon, I found it. A plain, brown box sat on my front porch. It was unmarked, except for a cryptic return address, a post office box in some far-off state I didn't recognize. Something about it felt wrong. The air around it seemed heavier. But I had paid for this, right? Curiosity outweighed caution. I brought it inside and tore through the tape. What I found inside was the beginning of a nightmare I could never have prepared for. The box was packed with seemingly random items. On top was a faded red sweater, its fabric worn and frayed. I picked it up, immediately catching a faint, sweet scent, perfume mixed with something sour, almost metallic. Underneath the sweater was a set of car keys on a rusty chain. They jingled slightly, and the sound seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet of my apartment. I rummaged deeper and found a small wooden box. Inside were two cheap-looking silver rings and a necklace with a locket. I popped it open, and my breath hitched. The photo inside was old, sepia-toned, and slightly faded. It showed a smiling woman holding a child. But something about her eyes, they looked too focused, too real, almost like they were staring at me. I closed it quickly. Next was a Ziploc bag filled with white pills and a note scrawled in jagged handwriting: "You'll need these. Trust me." My fingers trembled as I folded the note. What did that mean? Why would I need pills? And then, at the bottom of the box, I found the final item, a tablet. It was an older model but functional. The screen flickered to life when I pressed the power button, showing a single app. The icon was a red eye, blinking slowly. I hesitated but tapped it. A video began to play. At first, it was nothing but static, but then the screen cleared, revealing shaky footage of a house. My heart skipped a beat. The house looked familiar, too familiar. As the camera panned, I saw the small garden out front and the chipped paint on the shutters. It was my parents' house. The footage cut abruptly to the inside, the living room, the hallway, the staircase. Every shot was from an odd, almost impossible angle, as if whoever filmed it was crawling or hiding. The final clip was of a bedroom. My parents' bedroom. They were asleep, unaware of the camera recording them from the doorway. And then it ended. I sat there in silence, my hands clammy and cold. This couldn't be real. It had to be a sick joke. But the air felt different now, oppressive. I grabbed the sweater, the jewelry box, and the keys, and shoved them back into the box. I needed to get rid of it. But as I stood, something stopped me cold. The tablet buzzed in my hand. A message appeared on the screen: "The night's not over yet." I tried to rationalize everything. Maybe the seller had access to my address and some old photos of my family. It was creepy but explainable. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow in the room seemed to stretch toward me, reaching, waiting. That night, I locked every door and window. My paranoia grew with every creak of the floorboards. Around midnight, I heard something outside, a faint rustling near the bushes. I peeked through the blinds, but the street was empty. Then came the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate. They circled the house, pausing beneath my bedroom window. My breath caught as I saw a silhouette, tall, gangly, and utterly still. It stood there for what felt like hours before disappearing into the night. I didn't sleep. The next day, I decided to destroy the tablet. I smashed it with a hammer, feeling a fleeting sense of relief as the glass shattered. But that night, another package arrived. Smaller this time, wrapped in brown paper. No return address. Inside was a replacement tablet, identical to the one I'd broken. It buzzed as I picked it up, the screen flickering to life with another message: "You can't stop what's coming." The following days blurred together in a haze of fear and sleeplessness. The contents of the box began to make sense in horrifying ways. The sweater, it wasn't mine, but I started seeing it in my dreams, worn by a faceless figure. The keys, one matched my front door perfectly. The pills. I almost took them one night when the panic became unbearable. And the videos on the tablet got worse. They showed people I didn't know, ordinary people in their homes, going about their lives. Then the intruder would appear, always in the background, always closer with each frame. The last clip was always the same: the victim's bedroom, the covers slowly being pulled back. It wasn't until I saw my bedroom in one of the clips that I finally broke. The footage showed me asleep, my chest rising and falling. And then the camera panned to my closet. The door creaked open, and for a split second, I saw them, the watchers. Pale faces, sunken eyes, grinning mouths. I screamed and threw the tablet across the room, smashing it to pieces. But even then, I knew it wasn't over. My phone buzzed. A single notification: "Don't look in the closet." I froze, my body numb. The room felt suffocatingly silent. And then, ever so slowly, the closet door creaked open behind me. The closet door creaked open an inch at a time, as though something inside was savoring the moment. I couldn't move. My body felt frozen, like my muscles had been drained of strength. My breaths were shallow, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out all other sounds. "Don't look in the closet." The words played on a loop in my mind. But how could I not? I couldn't just sit there, waiting for whatever was inside to emerge. Slowly, trembling, I reached for the lamp on my bedside table and turned it on. The warm glow filled the room but did little to ease my terror. The closet door was fully open now, revealing nothing but darkness inside. No clothes hanging on rods. No boxes are stacked on the floor. Just an empty black void that seemed to stretch endlessly. And then I saw them. 2 pinpricks of light blinked deep within the darkness, like eyes reflecting the lamp's faint light. They blinked again, and I realized with dawning horror that they weren't just eyes. They were watching me. A shadow moved, long fingers gripping the edge of the closet door. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body refused to cooperate. I stayed rooted to the bed, paralyzed as the hand stretched impossibly far, nails dragging against the hardwood floor with an ear-splitting screech. In a desperate act, I grabbed the wooden jewelry box from the mystery package and hurled it at the closet. The lid snapped open midair, spilling the rings and necklace onto the floor. The moment the locket hit the ground, the closet door slammed shut with a deafening bang, and the room fell silent. For a moment, I just sat there, gasping for air. Then my phone buzzed. I flinched and almost dropped it as I picked it up. A new message lit up the screen. That was rude. I spent the next day researching everything I could about the dark web and the idea of cursed objects. Nothing I found was comforting. Some articles talked about sellers embedding games or tasks into mystery boxes, psychological tricks to unnerve buyers. But this was more than a trick. This was personal. It was inside my home, inside my life. The tablet wouldn't stay destroyed. I tried burning it, drowning it, even driving out to a remote field and burying the pieces. But every morning, it reappeared on my desk, whole and buzzing with a new message. You're part of the game now. The videos continued, each one more disturbing than the last. It wasn't just my house being watched anymore, it was people I knew. Co-workers, friends, family. The footage showed them in their homes, going about their daily lives, oblivious to the shadowy figures lurking just out of view. I couldn't warn them, they'd think I was insane. I was alone in this. One day, the tablet buzzed with a live feed. My stomach churned as I realized what I was seeing, my parents' living room. They were sitting on the couch, watching TV, completely unaware of the figure standing in the hallway behind them. My hands shook as I called their house. My mom answered after the second ring. "Hey, sweetie. Everything okay?" she asked. "Mom, where's Dad? Are you guys safe?" I blurted out, my voice cracking. "We're fine," she said, confused. "Your dad's right here." "What's going on?" "Lock the doors," I begged. "Close the curtains. Don't let anyone in." "Darren, you're scaring me, just do it." I snapped and hung up before she could argue. I stared at the screen, watching as the figure retreated down the hallway and disappeared into the shadows. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. The box, the tablet, the messages, it was a trap, a game I had been pulled into without consent. And there was no escaping it. The watchers were always a step ahead, their presence creeping closer no matter how far I tried to run. The final message came 2 nights later. The tablet buzzed as I sat in my darkened apartment, clutching the red sweater like a talisman. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help myself. "It's time to come home." That was all it said. No explanation, no instructions. But I understood. Somehow, deep in my gut, I knew it was referring to the house from the videos, the house that looked exactly like mine. I had avoided thinking about it, but now I had no choice. I packed a bag with essentials, a flashlight, a phone, and a crowbar for protection. The pills from the mystery box went into my pocket as well. "You'll need these. Trust me." I didn't know what they were for, but I wasn't leaving anything behind. The drive was long and silent, the night swallowing the road ahead. I didn't know where I was going. I just followed the pull in my chest, some primal instinct guiding me. When I finally arrived, my heart sank. The house stood in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dead trees and overgrown grass. It looked identical to my childhood home, every detail, down to the porch light flickering weakly in the wind. But I knew it wasn't the same. The air was heavy here, charged with something unnatural. I stepped inside, the door creaking open to reveal a scene from one of the videos. The living room was dusty and dark, the furniture draped in white sheets. The smell of decay hung in the air. As I moved deeper into the house, I felt them, the watchers. I couldn't see them, but I knew they were there, hiding in the shadows, waiting. At the end of the hallway was a door I had never seen in any of the footage. It was black, smooth, and featureless, as though it had been carved from a single piece of obsidian. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. Inside, the room was stark and empty, save for a single chair in the center. On the chair sat a figure, human-shaped, but wrong. Its limbs were too long, its skin too pale. Its face was obscured by a mask, featureless except for two hollow eye holes. It tilted its head as I entered, almost as if it were amused. "You finally made it," a voice said, low and guttural. It didn't come from the figure, but from everywhere at once. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "You bought the box," it replied simply. "You opened the door. Now, you belong to us." The room began to shift, the walls closing in, the shadows writhing like living things. I felt the pills in my pocket and understood. They weren't for anxiety. They were the only escape. I backed away, fumbling with the bottle as the figure stood, its movements jerky and inhuman. As it stepped toward me, I swallowed the pills in one desperate motion, the bitter taste burning my throat. The last thing I saw before everything faded was the figure leaning close, its hollow eyes staring into mine. "Sweet dreams," it whispered. Weeks later, another package arrived at a different doorstep. A plain brown box, unmarked and unassuming. Inside was a sweater, a set of keys, and a small wooden jewelry box. And, of course, a tablet. The game was about to begin again. It all started with an ad, a vague and unassuming job listing on a forum I stumbled upon late one night. I wasn't searching for anything sketchy, just browsing out of boredom. The headline read, "Seeking content moderator, work from home. Good pay." My first thought was that it was a scam, but I clicked anyway. The description was oddly brief, looking for meticulous individuals to review flagged media content. High pay, flexible hours. Must be resilient to disturbing material. Contact below. Something about it gnawed at me. Maybe it was the casual mention of disturbing material or the fact that it didn't specify what kind of content I'd be moderating. Still, I was desperate. My bills were stacking up, and the idea of working from home sounded too good to pass up. Besides, how bad could it really be? The application process was odd. I filled out an online form that didn't ask for much beyond my name, email, and a cryptic question: "What are your thoughts on censorship?" The background check was non-existent. By the next day, I had an email confirming my hire. A sense of relief washed over me, until I noticed the strange domain name in their email address, .onion. I should have stopped there, but I didn't. The onboarding was simple. They sent me software to download, along with strict instructions. The software required a Tor browser and connected me to a platform called Obscura. The interface was bleak, black background, white text, no logos or branding. I logged in with the credentials they provided and was greeted by a single message: "Welcome, moderator. Your task is to review flagged content for guideline violations. Please follow protocol. You will be compensated weekly." What followed was a list of content categories. There was the typical stuff like spam and scams, but then there were other, more ominous categories: explicit violence, illegal activities, miscellaneous anomalies. My stomach churned. This wasn't social media moderation, it was something else entirely. But before I could process the implications, my first batch of flagged content loaded. The first video autoplayed without warning. It was grainy footage of what looked like a street fight, brutal but not unimaginable. I flagged it as explicit violence and moved on. The second video was worse, a group of masked men vandalizing a home. Still unsettling, but nothing I couldn't handle. But then came the third clip. It opened on a basement, dimly lit by a single bulb. A man sat in the corner, trembling. His hands were tied, his mouth gagged. The camera lingered on him for an uncomfortably long time, as if daring me to look away. I hit the flag button, my hands shaking, but the clip didn't stop. The camera moved closer to the man, and I could see his face now, eyes darting wildly, tears streaming down his cheeks. Someone off-screen said something in a language I didn't understand, and then the video ended abruptly. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I wanted to quit right then, but my rent was due. I convinced myself that it was fake, a sick prank, maybe. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. By my second week, I noticed changes in the platform. The flagged content was becoming darker, more sinister. Videos of animal abuse. Footage of people being followed, their routines recorded from the shadows. One clip showed a woman in her kitchen, oblivious to the camera filming her through her window. Then there were the live streams. I wasn't told about them beforehand, they just appeared in my queue one night. The first was titled Room 426. The feed was low-res, showing a windowless room. In the center was a man, blindfolded, his arms suspended above his head by chains. He wasn't moving. I hesitated. There was no flag button for live streams, only a text box labeled Moderator Notes. I typed, "What am I supposed to do here?" A reply came instantly, "Observe." The camera zoomed in on the man's face. He flinched as a voice came through the speakers, again, in that unrecognizable language. I typed again, more desperate this time, "This violates guidelines. Should I report it?" The reply was different this time, "Do not intervene." I wanted to log off, to close the software and delete it forever, but I felt trapped. If I quit, would they come after me? They had my IP address, my name, my bank details. They knew where I lived. The live streams became a regular part of my job. Each one was more horrifying than the last. They weren't just random acts of cruelty, they felt organized, deliberate. Like someone was staging them for an audience. One night, a stream appeared with the title, "For the Moderator's Eyes Only." My blood turned cold. The camera was positioned in a dimly lit living room, and on the couch was a figure with their back to the camera. It was me. I didn't sleep that night. I unplugged my laptop, packed a bag, and drove to a motel 2 towns over. But it didn't help. When I turned on the TV in the motel room, the screen was filled with static. And then, briefly, I saw myself on the screen. Not a reflection, but footage, sitting in that very room. I smashed the TV with the lamp. The next morning, I got a text from an unknown number, "Go home." Back at my apartment, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a flash drive and a note, "Complete your shift." Against every instinct, I plugged it into my laptop. The flash drive contained a single file, a video titled Assignment 17. It showed a man tied to a chair in a room I didn't recognize. His head was slumped forward, his breathing shallow. A timestamp in the corner indicated this was live. Then I saw the prompt, "Moderator action required." Below it were two buttons, "Proceed" and "Terminate." I stared at the screen, my pulse roaring in my ears. Was this a test? If I hit "Terminate," was I killing someone? Or was it just another sick game? My finger hovered over the mouse, paralyzed by indecision. Finally, I chose. I stared at the screen, my breath shallow and uneven. The options blinked below the live feed like two glowing eyes. "Proceed," "Terminate." The man on the screen wasn't moving much anymore, his head slumped forward, his shoulders shaking with muffled sobs. His hands were bound tightly to the arms of the chair, the rope biting into his skin, leaving raw, bloody marks. He wasn't just scared, he was broken. And I had to choose. Proceed. Terminate. I swallowed hard, my hand trembling on the mouse. It felt like every second of hesitation was stretching into an eternity. Somewhere, someone was waiting for me to act. Watching. Monitoring my every twitch, every breath. And somewhere, a man's life hung in the balance because of me. "It's not real," I whispered, barely convincing myself. "It can't be real. It's just a sick test. A game." But deep down, I knew it wasn't. My finger hovered over the "Terminate" button. If I pressed it, what would happen? Would it end this madness? Would I finally be free of their grasp? Or would it be worse? Would I be responsible for murder? The man raised his head suddenly, his face turned toward the camera. His lips moved frantically, forming words, but there was no sound. I couldn't hear him, but I could feel his desperation. His eyes, God, his eyes, locked on mine through the screen, wide and pleading. He shook his head violently, repeatedly, his mouth forming a single word, "Please." I couldn't do it. I hit "Proceed." The screen flickered, and the camera zoomed out. A door opened behind the man, and a figure stepped into the room. He was tall, dressed in black, his face obscured by a mask. The light glinted off something in his hand, a knife, long and thin. The bound man screamed, thrashing against the chair, the sound tinny and distorted through the speakers. The masked figure didn't hesitate. He moved quickly, methodically, gripping the man's hair and tilting his head back. The blade glinted as it sliced across his throat in a swift, practiced motion. I recoiled, nearly falling out of my chair as blood sprayed across the room. The man convulsed violently, choking on his own screams, before slumping forward, lifeless. The masked figure turned toward the camera, toward me. He tilted his head, as if studying my reaction, then raised a hand and waved slowly. The screen went black. I bolted from my chair, my chest heaving. I felt sick, physically sick. My vision blurred as I stumbled to the bathroom, barely making it to the sink before vomiting. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, sweat dripping down my face. What had I just done? Was this real? Was I complicit in someone's death? Or had I just been manipulated into playing along with their twisted theatrics? I splashed cold water on my face, trying to calm down, but it didn't help. My thoughts spiraled out of control. Had they seen me hesitate? did I fail their test. A sharp knock on my door snapped me out of my daze. I froze, my heart lurching into my throat. Nobody knew where I lived, not my friends, not my family. I inched toward the door, every instinct screaming at me to run, but I couldn't. I peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty. When I opened the door, there was only a small box on the floor, wrapped in plain brown paper. No label. No address. I picked it up with trembling hands, my mind racing with possibilities. Back inside, I tore it open. Inside was a phone, cheap and unbranded, like a burner. It buzzed to life the second I touched it, the screen lighting up with a message, "Good work." But there's more to come. I dropped the phone like it burned me, backing away as it buzzed again. Another message appeared, "Don't think about running." I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the apartment made me jump, every shadow seemed to stretch and shift toward me. I locked the door, checked the windows, and sat in the corner of my living room with a kitchen knife in my hand. At some point, exhaustion overtook me. When I woke, the TV was on, static filling the screen. I didn't remember turning it on. As I reached for the remote, the static cut to an image. It was me. Sitting there on the couch. I blinked, disoriented. The image on the screen wasn't a reflection, it was a recording. The timestamp in the corner said it was live. In the video, I saw myself sitting perfectly still, staring at the TV. But behind me, something moved. A figure stepped into the frame, dressed in black, their face obscured by a mask. They raised a hand, long fingers curling into a mock wave, and then reached toward the back of my head. I whipped around, knife in hand, but there was no one there. The phone buzzed again, vibrating wildly against the coffee table. I didn't want to touch it, but I had no choice. The screen lit up with a single message, "You chose wisely. We'll be in touch." I wanted to scream, to smash the phone, the TV, everything. But I knew it wouldn't matter. They were watching. They'd always been watching. I couldn't run. I couldn't hide. And I knew, deep down, that the worst was yet to come.